Hello from South Dakota, Camp Rapid City. This is Captain David Ruffermat. Today I'm going to make a video about the proper use of the Wet Bulb Globe Temperature Index Calculator. This is an amazing piece of technology, old-fashioned analog technology that was first conceived, interestingly enough, by Navy medical personnel in the 40s and 50s as they were training Marines in warm, hot, humid environments and had a very high heat casualty percentage. These guys came up with this system, which is called the Wet Bulb thermometer system, and it's actually a series of 3 thermometers, which I will show you now. The first one, which is the one in the middle, we call the dry bulb, abbreviation DB. That one gives the ambient temperature. You can see it's reading about 97. This one is significant only for having this little shade gizmo, which keeps it out of direct sunlight. So it's a shade temperature. It's just the ambient temperature. It's what we all think of when we think of a regular temperature measuring the air temperature. The second one is the wet bulb thermometer. It's this lower one. It's right now reading 100 degrees, if you can see that. However, it's not a wet bulb thermometer yet because it does not have the wet sock on it. This is a reservoir of ambient temperature water, not cold water, just water that's at the same temperature as ambient, 94 degrees. So it's not cooling it by being cold water, it's cooling it by evaporative cooling. And you put the sock which is really a wick on this thermometer. You wet it with the reservoir of ambient temperature water, and the magic happens. Look at this. The evaporative cooling of this thermometer is dropping the temperature of the wet bulb from 100 already down. You can watch that mercury drop as the evaporative cooling takes energy out of the mercury molecules in the thermometer. The mercury contracts as a liquid and goes down. We're watching that drop now. And you can make the point, this is the same way our bodies cool. And that's why this measurement device is better than the heat index, which just takes into account temperature and humidity. This apparatus takes into account, number one, humidity and breeze or wind, because the lower the humidity and the more breeze, the more evaporative cooling is going to happen from the wet bulb thermometer. It also takes into account radiant heat load, which means how much sun is there, but also how direct are the sun's rays. In other words, what latitude are you at? Are you at the equator or are you in northern Canada? There's a big difference in the directness of the heat. And this third thermometer that we haven't talked about measures the radiant heat load, which also takes into account if there's cloud cover or not, and the directness of the sun's rays. This is a regular thermometer, but it's clad in a black globe, which is a black copper sheathing meant to measure the input from the radiation of the sun. And you'll notice here that this gizmo has this platform which you need to put up And that's because, and it's also on a tripod, you want that to be at 4 or 5 feet or so to accurately measure the type of wind flow that that each individual soldier or Marine or sailor is going to be experiencing in the field. So you put the platform up. You should actually, the directions call for pointing the black globe directly at the sun, and then you wet the wick of the wet bulb thermometer, and then you do your measurement. The measurement starts by, there's directions here. Number 1, set wet bulb temperature at dry bulb temperature. So you first read the dry bulb temperature. That's the middle thermometer, which is only in the shade. And you can see, hopefully, that is reading right now 94 degrees, okay? So the dry bulb is 94. So dry bulb temp 94. These are by 2, so it's right there. Next, we're going to get the wet bulb temperature. This is going to be our contribution from what's the relative humidity and how much breeze is there. The lower the humidity and the more breeze, the more evaporative cooling our bodies can do, and the more evaporative cooling this thermometer can do. I'm going to read that as 72. So that is a 72 for the wet bulb. So using this slide rule, I'm going to set 72 from the wet bulb under the dry bulb temperature of, what did we call it? 94. So 72, the hash mark for 72 is right here, and I'm going to put it under the 94. Some of these go by 2, some go by 1. This one goes by 2. So it's 94 and 72. Boom. That's step 1. 94 and 72. Step 2 is you read the WBGT index at the black globe temperature. So you need to go back up to the black globe. Remember, this is the contribution from radiant load, which, if you're an HVAC technician, this is the amount of heat by radiation from the sun. Not the ambient temperature, but just direct sunshine. Greater in the lower latitudes and greater on a cloudless day. Right now it reads 116, we'll call it. So then you go down and perform the final step here, and you look at the BG temperature, 116. So 116 is going to be here. So 116, and then you go up and you get your index answer right here. So that's a 123, 83. So that would be your final answer, except, and then these colors are the flag conditions. That would be your final answer, except today we're in a field training scenario where the soldiers are wearing not the heaviest gear, not rucksacks, but a light amount of web gear. And policy calls for adding 5 points to the WBGT index when wearing the web gear. So let's just do the whole thing once more, and then at the end we add 5 points. So ambient temperature 94, wet bulb temperature is now, we'll call it 73. So 73 on 94, set the slide rule. You only have to set the slide rule once to line up the wet bulb temperature and the dry bulb temperature. The rest is just reading. And then you go here, 116 from the black globe brings you to 84. Index of 84 plus 5 points for the amount of gear they're wearing, which of course prevents the most efficient evaporative cooling when you're wearing a helmet, flak jacket, web gear, etc. So 84 plus 5 is 80, 116, 84 plus 5, 89. So our final report is wet bulb index of 89, red flag conditions, and we call that in on the hour, usually at the 15-minute mark, on the radio net in the following fashion. All stations, this is TMC, wet bulb index 89, red flag. Say again, 89, red flag, over. And this gives the instructors vital information which helps to prevent heat casualties, because when they're in a red flag situation, they know that they need to rest them and hydrate them more frequently than a yellow flag, more frequently than a green flag. And of course, black flag would be even worse. We're probably on our way to a black flag condition as the afternoon progresses. So that is a summary of this amazing piece of analog technology. Hopefully you have an appreciation for what these 3 thermometers do. Remember, it's not just one thermometer, it's 3 thermometers set up differently. The wet bulb to measure evaporative heat loss, a proxy for humidity and wind speed. The middle temperature, the middle thermometer in the shade, just to measure ambient temperature. And finally, the black globe to measure radiant heat load, proxy for amount of cloud cover and latitude. So that's the end of this presentation. Hopefully this will be useful to future groups as we provide this important wet bulb index information to our Army colleagues. And signing off from Camp Rapid, South Dakota, it's Captain David Ruffermat. Good day, shipmates.